The radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday, October 14th, another edition of our news roundup. I hope everybody's having a great week. All right, I guess we can just jump into it. I mean, the chorus of congratulations, self-congratulations, and enthusiasm around the peace in our time is quite stunning. I know that Trump has declared that he has established peace in the Middle East for the first time in 3,000 years. That is quite a statement. But is there peace in the Middle East? Is the issue in Gaza solved? I mean, even Trump knows that's not true, and it hasn't been yet finalized. He tweeted today, somewhat angrily, about Hamas already having violated the agreement by not releasing the bodies of Israeli dead that they are holding on to. According to the agreement, they were supposed to hand them over already. Indeed, everything is suggesting that Hamas has no intention of living up to the agreement or to the outline of an agreement. The agreement was never, phase two was never hashed out. That Trump is advocating for. Now, this could all change. Qatar and Turkey and Egypt could get together and put pressure again on Hamas and somehow change their mind. But at least as of right now, Hamas is openly stating that they have no intention of disarming. They have no intention of giving up power in Gaza, which are, of course, two requirements for any kind of deal moving forward and rebuilding and establishing an interim governing body and all of that. Hamas has expressed no interest in any of that. They said they would disarm when there is a Palestinian military force in a new Palestinian state. They have no intention of disarming before that. The Hamas spokesman declared that the group rejects all of Israel's demands related to weapons. He says, quote, "We will not be prisoners to Israeli terminology or demands. This will be a key focus in the next phase of our struggle." Again, there's no interest in giving up rule over Gaza. Indeed, quite the opposite. Hamas has spent the last 2 days rounding up anybody who might be in opposition to them controlling Gaza, the various tribes, the various families, clans within Gaza that might object to the rule of Hamas. Hamas is running them up and basically executing them. I mean, there's vivid video online of people being, on their knees, being shot in the back of the head by Hamas. This is not video they're trying to hide. This is not video they're trying to shield the world from. They don't care what the world thinks. I mean, they know that the world is not going to think any ill of them. The world has shown that. They have declared that they will continue fighting. Basically, until Israel ceases to exist and there's a Palestinian state from the river to the sea. As I said, they have not returned all the bodies. Also, this morning, there was a number of Hamas armed approached Israeli lines. The Israelis told them to back off. They shot into the air. They gave them every indication to move away. They refused. They kept moving towards Israeli lines, and Israel shot them. Hamas is clearly trying to provoke Israel into continuing the war. Hamas wants the war to continue. It does not want peace. It does not want a ceasefire. Maybe they appeased their masters in Qatar and in Turkey by releasing the hostages. It'll be interesting looking back in a few years to why exactly they did it and what exactly happened that got them to do that. But they have no interest in actually abiding by the complete deal that Trump has submitted, tried to impose on them. Now, again, things could change. It could be that they're just flexing muscles right now, and their handlers in Qatar and elsewhere will clamp down on them and get them back in line. But as of now, there is no peace deal in Gaza. Hamas has not accepted the terms. I'm not sure when negotiations will start up again. And in between, Hamas will do everything in its power to, short of complete suicide, to provoke Israel. And you have to ask the question, partially, why? They know very well that if Israel decided to come back into Gaza again, that this time without the hostages, it is quite likely that Israel will actually destroy Hamas. That is, it'll kill many of them. It'll destroy their tunnels, which are bound to be destroyed anyway. One way or another, those tunnels, one suspects, are going to be destroyed. Israel has a potential to really this time cripple them or destroy them completely. So why would Hamas want this? Well, I think they see their primary victory since October 7th. The primary victory since October 7th is the attitude of the West. I think they see as their primary victory since October 7th, the thousands of people in New York and London streets protesting in favor of Hamas. I think their primary victory since October 7th was the announcement by, the Prime Minister of the UK and of Spain and Macron and Canada to recognize a Palestinian state. They're not winning on the ground. They're not winning even in the Middle East. They're losing allies in the Middle East. But they are winning in the hearts and minds of the West. And my view is their strategic long-term calculation is that is more valuable than anything else. Indeed, they are willing to die. They're willing to commit jihad. They're willing to sacrifice their own lives for the sake of more demonstrations in New York, more calls for Israel as a genocidal nation, more countries recognizing a Palestinian state. They understand the power of the West's sanction of their cause. And they're willing to die for that, shockingly. But they're willing to die for a lot of things. Life is not that precious for Hamas and Islamists like them. So what they want is for the shouts of genocide to return. What they want is for Israel to stop bombing Gaza again. What they want is for more Gazan civilians, children, women, to die by Israeli hands. They don't care. Quite the contrary. What they want is to continue to create a wedge between Israel and the West. And, they think they can be successful at this. Now, again, their interests might diverge from the interests of Qatar or Saudi Arabia or Turkey or Egypt, who are right now primarily focused on, appeasing and being nice to and being friendly to Donald Trump and the Trump administration. So we are going to see, but it certainly is way too early to declare this an amazing victory. It's really good to see the hostages released. It's good to see the hostages released without Israel giving up too much territory, particularly the Philadelphia corridor. And I don't think that was on the table in the past. A lot of people are saying, oh, they could have done this deal 9 months ago. They could have done this deal last year. I don't think it was ever on the table that Israel would stay in as much of the Gaza Strip as they are in right now, and they get the hostages back. Anyway, I'm happy for the deal because Israel's in a better position now to destroy Hamas. I even will say I'm happy that Hamas doesn't want a peace because I think they need to be destroyed. I think nothing short of their destruction will actually lead to long-term peace. So if Hamas gives Israel an excuse to go in and destroy them, all the power to them, and I'm all in support of that. So we will keep watching and keep following to try to see exactly what is going on. And I have no idea how this is exactly going to play out because I think this is going to depend to a large extent on the incentives of these other Arab countries and on Trump's willingness to give it the attention that it requires rather than declare peace. Actually, now the hard work of establishing that peace starts, and whether he is willing to devote that time, that effort, that focus to establishing that peace. Or to trying to move towards that peace, we will see. We can hope. We can hope. All right. In the meantime, in the United States, there was a big brouhaha. We talked about this. I think we talked about this story a couple of weeks ago. But there was a big brouhaha about new requirements for reporters at the Pentagon. So the Pentagon is, as of today at 5 p.m., supposedly going to be requiring any reporter that wants to get a badge and wants to be able to be in the building, in the Pentagon, and report from the Pentagon, have basically press coverage, press access. They're going to require them to sign a 21-page document. This document is going to restrict the ability of journalists to do their job. Journalists cannot ask anybody at the Pentagon for any information, even on things that are unclassified, unless that information has been approved and given a thumbs up and actually been what do you call it? There's been, in a sense, a press release by the Pentagon itself. It makes reporters dependent 100% on the Pentagon and nothing else. The press obviously, the press obviously is now saying they won't sign this. Let's see. The press is claiming that these restrictions are intended to, quote, gag Pentagon employees and threatens retaliation against reporters who seek out information that has not been pre-approved for release. In their view, this pledge is part of an effort by the Trump administration to limit information being provided to the public about what is going on in the Pentagon and in the U.S. Armed Forces. Basically, no news organization except one has agreed to sign it. The one news organization is the One America News outlet. This is kind of a right of Newsmax. But in the meantime, the Atlantic, Associated Press, Axios, CNN, Guardian, Newsmax, New York Times, NPR, Reuters, Washington Post, and Washington Times have announced that they're refusing to sign this. Fox, supposedly, has privately told their reporters that they do not expect them to follow through with today's ultimatum, and they should not sign the pledge. So even Fox, it seems, is refusing to have their reporters sign it. Hegseth is claiming, oh, no, this is just about waving badges. And no, I mean, if you look at the document is clearly aimed at trying to restrict information flows and trying to basically ban reporters from doing their job. Again, the Pentagon is claiming this is all part of their attempt to stop leaks. Anyway, we'll see. It does appear that starting tomorrow, starting 5 p.m. tonight, there will basically be no reporting out of the Pentagon. That is, the news organizations will be barred from entering the building and talking to staff. Now, the consequence of this are primarily going to be that the news organizations will rely on meetings outside of the Pentagon, hush-hush meetings in different locations. And they will know a lot less about what is actually going on at the Pentagon. Reporters have said, this has never been the case, not in the halls of the Pentagon and not, when they were assigned to the military to report on in combat operations with the military overseas. This is unprecedented. It's not surprising. It is consistent with the attempt of this administration to kind of silence opposition and to restrict information flows, I think, more broadly. We will see how this plays out. So this is a power play between now the media and Hegseth, and we'll see how it plays out. Yep. Let's see. All right. The idea is that they will kick them out today. They will literally not allow them in anymore. Of course, this is consistent with what they do in other countries, countries who are significantly less free. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of impact this has on coverage of what's going on in the military. Coverage which I think has been overly friendly to the military and overly friendly to the Department of Defense for the last 30 years. Or certainly 25 years since 9/11. Coverage that has not been critical enough of Afghanistan and Iraq, not been critical enough of the behavior of the military, not being critical enough of the rules of engagement, not being critical enough of the fact that these missions that the American military was sent on, it was never intended to win. So it's sad to see that the response to the failure of our press to actually hold those in power to account is now, even the little that they did is going to go away. I'm still, it's years now, but I'm still shocked, and it still upset me forever, I guess. The fact that the Washington Post at some point published this, basically a book, ultimately, critical of a book of interviews with generals and Defense Department people, basically laying out all the lies that the American public were told. So the Washington Post did a brilliant job of just showing what they said, what actually happened, what they said then, what they said later, and just the lying that went on in terms of Afghanistan. And it was a series of articles in the Washington Post, and then it came out as a book. And nobody cared. It was just no response. Thousands of American kids were killed and injured in Afghanistan, and it turns out it was all for nothing, not zero, zilch, nada. And this is not a Democratic or Republican thing. Both Republican and Democrats participated in this, and yet it got no coverage. Nobody literally cares. They shout, they go, they demonstrate, they anti-war, anti-this, anti-that. But when it comes to actual critique, actual laying out the facts, nobody actually cares. Sad state of the world. All right, in the last few days, there's been a lot of people talking about the possibility of an actual military engagement and a war between Russia and NATO. We've seen over the last couple of months lots of Russian provocations. If you go back further than a few months, we've seen Russian sabotage in various European countries. We saw over the last few weeks Russian using drones to just harass and to shut down airports, for example, in Northern Europe, but to also infringe on the airspace of Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, and generally just harass, just intimidate. We saw Russian ships cut communication lines in the Baltic Sea with almost no response from anybody. And there just seems to be an accelerated sense that Russia is inching towards greater and greater provocation and becoming more and more aggressive against the West. And some are suggesting the possibility that, and this is actually NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte has suggested, I think yesterday, that if China decides to move against Taiwan, which it might sooner rather than later, although Trump, of course, is the president of peace, and China would never, ever, 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 ever think of doing such a thing when Trump is president. But nonetheless, if China decides to move against Taiwan, that China is likely to push Russia to act against NATO as a massive distraction. And that makes sense to me. I think that's part of, I mean, look, Russia is beholden to China. China is the senior partner between the two. China has the capacity, to shut down the Russian economy. The Russian economy survives only because China makes it possible for it to survive. So the question here is, if that happens, what would be the outcome? And look, I've told you what I think. I've told you this for months, years, really since the Ukraine war started. The reality is that Russia wouldn't survive a week. I mean, former General Ben Hodges, I think also yesterday said, if Russia got into a dispute with NATO, Kaliningrad and Sevastopol, these are two major ports, Russia, he said it would be destroyed in the very first hours of a NATO operation. I mean, Russia would be devastated. Poland today has a military that could alone take on the Russians and destroy them. Poland has almost doubled the size of its military, boosted military spending to 5% of GDP, and today has a more sophisticated, more modern, far better equipped with Western equipment than anything Russia has. One of the things that we see in Ukraine is what happens when no side has air superiority. But in a struggle between NATO and Russia, air superiority would be established very, very quickly. NATO would take out air defense systems on the Russian side quickly and thoroughly, at least, if they've learned anything from the Israelis, and with the use of F-35 stealth fighters. The S-400 batteries, the S-300 batteries, maybe even the S-500 batteries would have no chance. And once NATO establishes air superiority, it doesn't matter how many drones you have. It doesn't matter how many people you have that are willing to commit suicide. They will be, rushed to heaven by NATO air power. So, NATO would dominate any conflict with Russia. And I think I think the Chinese know this. So while such a distraction might be helpful to them, is it a big enough distraction for them? And would it be distracting enough of the Americans? Would America even come to Taiwan's help? It's not clear. There's a lot of unknowns, and a lot of unknowns from the Chinese perspective. What would happen if they actually invaded Taiwan? What would happen to the economy? What would happen to sanctions? What would happen to their ability to trade? But what would happen to their fleet? What would happen? The United States is deploying, as far as I can tell, and I hope this is true, deploying large numbers of stealth unmanned submarines into that part of the Pacific Ocean, the Western Pacific, off the coast of China. What could such stealth unmanned submarines or other types of boats do to the Chinese Navy? Look what a few unmanned boats in the Black Sea held by the Ukrainians completely devastated the Russian Navy. Russia has no presence in the Black Sea. It has no presence now in the Mediterranean. Russia's Navy has been decimated. It's in port out of fear of Ukrainian unmanned boats, very unsophisticated unmanned boats. Wanda Freeman keeps posting stuff on the chat and then retracting it. What's going on? He wants you guys all to see what he says, but then does not want it to remain for posterity. It's really weird. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I get retracting a few things, but every single comment he's made, he's retracted. Just retract. You care to explain yourself, Wanda Freeman? Maybe not. Anyway, Russia's poking. One of Freeman says, "What do you need repeated?" I don't need anything repeated. I don't read most of the comments. I just find it bizarre, and I can't read the comments because they've disappeared. Yeah, let me just see. Was there something else here? Poland is, among other things, purchased $50 billion worth of U.S. weapon systems. It's got new divisions. It's got new territorial defense forces. It's got large-scale exercises with its allies. It's got, right now, a relatively thriving economy. See, he retracted even the question of what do I want to see that needs to be repeated. It just makes no sense. Yeah, I don't know. He wants to make sure that none of this is maintained forever, that he has plausible deniability. Yeah. So anyway, NATO, I think, is a good position to take on Russia. I think it would be suicidal of Putin to engage with Russia. I think there are many people in Russia who knows this. They're poking, they are harassing, but I don't think they're going to do anything. Now, I didn't think they would go into Ukraine because I thought that would be suicidal for them. And indeed, if you look at 4 years into the war, almost 4 years into the war, it will be 4 years in February, Russia is gaining no ground. It's inching forward. It's barely moving. Somebody did a calculation. What was it? It would take him 100 years to occupy Ukraine at this rate. So it's not doing well. It's not doing well. One of Freeman says, I just cleaned up all my comments from the last 7 years. I don't want to repeat the process. I mean, there's an easy way to avoid that, and that's just don't make comments. I mean, if you're going to clean up all the comments, imagine if I had to clean up everything I've said over the last 20 years, which is all basically public, videotaped, audio taped, in print, in writing, in stuff. God, that is a lot of work, and that luckily I have no intention of doing that. I either stand by what I said in the past or I don't. And I said in the past I was wrong. I could be wrong. I'm allowed to be wrong. In the meantime, Trump seems to be, I don't know, he seems to be becoming more sane when it comes to foreign policy. He's more sane when it comes to Israel, and now he's slowly becoming more sane with Ukraine. It appears the Trump administration is going to approve these cruise missiles, the Tomahawk cruise missiles, sale to the Ukrainians. And I don't know what kind of conditions they'll place on the use. Hopefully none. But that is a game changer. I mean, these cruise missiles can reach deep into Russia. They are precision weapons. You can thread them through a window. They are very difficult to shoot down because of the way they fly. Very difficult to detect. This is a game changer in terms of, Ukraine's ability to take out Russian assets deep within Russia. Now, Ukraine has been doing a really, really good job over the last few months on taking out oil refineries and oil assets of the Russians. Ukraine has developed their own Tomahawk-like cruise missiles, but they can only produce small numbers of their new cruise missiles. I think they can launch 3 a day. They hope to bring it up to 6 a day. The Tomahawks will give them much larger capabilities. I'm assuming the United States will send them Tomahawk missiles that are close to expiration date that the United States would have to destroy anyway. Might as well destroy them over Russian facilities, and go out there and do that. But this could be definitely a game changer in terms of the world. It doesn't change the reality on the ground, in combat, on the line of defense, but it shifts resources, Russian resources. It basically makes oil scarce. It makes it very difficult for Russia to sell oil. It makes it very difficult for them to get fuel, both for their armored vehicles and tanks and everything else, and for civilian purposes. It demoralizes the Russians, and it reduces their capacity to wage war. Over time, as that gets eroded, you can imagine the Ukrainians starting to make progress on the ground, pushing the Russians out of Ukrainian territory, which is ultimately their goal. As part of selling Tomahawk missiles to the Ukrainians, the White House is also putting significant pressure on the Germans to deliver Taurus missiles to Ukraine. Taurus missiles also, I think these are cruise missiles, also with a significant range, access into Russia, would be another game changer. Would just give the Ukrainians many, many more tools to be able to devastate Russian facilities behind the lines, maybe go after some of the aircraft that launch missiles at and launch the ballistic missiles at Ukraine, maybe go after more of the oil facilities, maybe go after troops that are being arrayed in the back with anticipation of sending to the front. Might as well kill them before they even make it to the front. There are many, many ways in which these weapons can be used to basically give Ukraine an advantage vis-a-vis Russia. So good for Trump for changing his mind. Now Zelensky is coming to the White House on Friday. Who knows what will happen? Let's hope. I think he's learned that, basically grovel, suck up, like every second sentence, thank Donald Trump and emphasize his greatness. And if you do that, and you do it regularly and you do it constantly, then you will get everything you want. I think he's learned that. I think he's being trained by the Europeans. The Europeans have learned that. I think now that is the new way in which to deal with Trump, and Zelensky's figured out. So I expect the meeting to go smoothly on Friday. But who knows? I mean, J.D. Vance is still pretty hostile to Ukraine, and he might try to sabotage whatever happens. Yeah. Hopefully, they'll approve the Tomahawks. They'll get the Germans to approve their missiles, and Ukraine will be armed to be able to inflict maximum pain on Russia. All right, just a few more comments on rare earth. We talked about it yesterday and I think last week. I mean, this is a big deal. The trade war between China and the United States continues, in spite of the attempt both of Trump and the Chinese to kind of lower the pressure. Today, the Chinese announced kind of sanctions on a bunch of companies owned by the South Koreans, but doing business with the United States. Supposedly, these are shipbuilding companies that are working with the U.S. Navy on building ships. So that they are sanctioning foreign companies that are working with the Defense Department. This is again one more escalation on a series of escalations. I mean, the biggest deal here is the rare earth material that have the potential to really shut down military production in the United States, shut down the defense industry, both in the United States and Europe, shut down innovation, shut down the technology industry. I mean, basically, our economy our tech industry is completely dependent on these rare earth materials and some of the magnets that 93% of which are made by the Chinese. It is pretty shocking that whoever thought of this trade war didn't think of this in advance and didn't plan for this. There's no reason the United States needs to be dependent on China for any of this. Indeed, in the 1980s, we were the leading miner and refiner of rare earth materials in the world. We gave that up. We gave that up primarily for environmentalist reasons. We gave it up because we're anti-mining. We gave it up because we're anti-refining, because refining is a relatively dirty business. It would take some time, but it is not impossible. It actually is quite easy to bring back the mining to the United States. It would require repealing some of the regulations and laws that restrict the ability to mine in the U.S. It would involve getting rid of some of the regulations and laws that restrict the production of these as well. It seems like that is the direction the Trump administration would like to go, but it does seem like in order to do that, they're going to have to really repeal some regulations and actually go to Congress and get it done. In the meantime, the U.S. government is investing in rare earth material companies in the United States, which is the wrong approach, which is only going to distort the market, create winners and losers, instead of just lowering the barriers, eliminating government obstruction, and letting the market rip, which is the right way to approach things like this. But the United States could become the world's largest manufacturer of rare earth and refiner of rare earth. It might be more expensive to do it in the U.S., but for national security reasons and for other reasons, that might not be that big of an issue. The quicker, the faster they do it. I mean, if you care about national defense, if you care about American national defense, then this should be like number one issue on your agenda. This should be the thing that you push Congress about. This is the thing to really, focus the Department of Energy and I'm sure the Interior Department on allowing mining. We saw some of that with this bill that was just passed that allowed more mining in 3 states. Need a lot more of that. A lot more of that. Now, some of that is happening. And one of the ways we can see that is happening is that private investors are now focusing some of their money on things like rare earth companies. Now, part of that might be because they figure, well, if the U.S. government is investing in them, it's a no-lose proposition to invest in ourselves because the government will always bail out companies that they invest in. So part of this is a consequence of cronyism. But, for example, J.P. Morgan just announced that they're going to be investing $10 billion of their own money, of J.P. Morgan funds, in the defense and rare earth companies. And here, defense, we're meaning not old-line defense, but cutting-edge, new defense industry. They realize that the U.S. is pivoting, and the U.S. is going to be buying a lot of kind of drones that are in robots that have military applications. And also rare earth is going to be requiring AI. So a lot of these supply chains are going to come back to the United States, and that's a good thing. And all the U.S. government really needs to do is drop the restrictions. The rest seems like China's helping by China restricting the sale of all these goods and products. So JP Morgan's going to invest in rare earth mining, missile manufacturing, and maybe American-made magnets. And that's the way it should be. It should be private enterprise picking the winners and losers, private enterprise putting its own skin in the game and bringing its expertise to this kind of investment. The government should stay out of it. It should lower the barriers to entry, allow for investment, allow for mining, allow for production, and then move out. And then, buy the goods that they need when they need them. Just as an aside, not exactly relevant to rare earth, but relevant to tariffs and trade wars, this was a really interesting confession by the CEO of Cleveland Cliffs, I think the second largest or the largest manufacturer of steel in the United States. Cliff, in 2024, Cleveland Cliffs lost $700 million. And in the first quarter of 2025, it announced that they were idling or closing down 6 mills across several states. But they're very happy with Trump's original 25% tariffs on steel, and super happy when Trump raised that tariff to 50% in June. The CEO of Cliffs, said the tariffs are already beginning to have a positive effect. Well, of course, he's raised prices dramatically. He's raised prices on his customers dramatically. Raised prices, and therefore it's having a positive impact on his business. And then he says, and this is a quote from him, "I have been fighting for this for almost 30 years. I am very happy with 50%. And without giving any details, I have my fingerprints on the 50%. In other words, I influenced that." So we now have American businessmen proud of their own cronyism, of their own, manipulating the government, or the president in this case, to put on tariffs that protect them, inflict huge damage on other parts of the economy, on their customers in particular, the people who use steel, but protects them. And Cliff is, they're doing fine because they're raising prices significantly. Even if demand drops a little bit, they can raise prices so much because that they don't have to worry about it, right? 50% tariffs, that's a lot of room to raise prices. All right, some good news. We've got 3 good news stories. 3 good news stories. The first one is that the Supreme Court of the United States has refused to take up Alex Jones's appeal on the $1.4 billion judgment against him. Now, this is fantastic. Alex Jones will actually have to pay up to the families that he had defamed, the families of the Sandy Hook massacre. Now, I don't know if $1.4 billion is the right amount. I don't know if these amounts have not reached the absurd levels of so on. But I'm happy to see Alex Jones completely bankrupted, and I think he deserves it for his conspiracy theory-laden lying and deception of people, and in this case, the defaming of parents whose children, 20 children, and 6 educated were killed in what he called the government false flag, which is it's just unbelievably disgusting and repulsive. Why anybody ever watches Alex Jones is beyond me. I mean, please don't tell me you listen and watch Alex Jones, because I will be repulsed. It's disgusting. I mean, this ban should be banned, not banned by the government, banned by social media, and certainly banned by you, the listener. Anyway, a Connecticut jury, basically found him guilty of defamation, and he had to pay damages of $965 million, plus $473 million in penalties for the years of lies and harassment. It wasn't just lying. He harassed these families. So while he argued free speech, you do not have the right to defame other people. You do not have a right to harass if it's real harassment. This is great. The Supreme Court didn't even take a hearing. It didn't even blink. It had showed no sympathy. And basically, he's now bankrupt. Now, he's still broadcasting. And there's still other lawsuits against him. But it does look like financially Alex Jones is finished. It would be great if he was kicked off the air. Maybe he can co-host a show with Tucker Carlson. But other than that, I mean, the guy's finished completely. And that's good news. That's good news. Good news story number one. We have four good news stories. I mean, that's a lot. I promise more good news, right? I mean, this is an interesting one, right? So for years, I and many other economists and others have been arguing that, look, the reason tuition at universities goes up like this is because basically the government is willing to write a loan check for any amount. And the more the universities raise tuition, government is willing to write big loan checks, and students are like, I just want to go to Harvard. I'll figure out how to pay it later. And it's just ramped up and ramped up and ramped up and ramped up. And the government, not like a bank, if you go to a bank for a loan, they want to know you can pay it back. They would ask you what degree you're getting at what university, what your employment prospects are after getting the degree. And they would not be willing to fund some of the outrageous levels of tuition that are out there in the world because there's just no way to pay those back, those kind of loans back. Anyway, so we've got an experiment right now. It turns out that in the big, beautiful bill, there was some good provisions in the big, beautiful something bill. There was a provision that basically said that for professional schools, like law school, the government is capping the amounts of lending it will do at $50,000 a year, with a total cap of $200,000. That is, you can get $50,000 for 4 years, not more than that. So if you want to go to law school, whatever the tuition happens to be, you can only get from the government $50,000 a year. Now, this is an interesting experiment. That is this $50,000 cap going to have a mitigating impact on tuition, for example, at law schools, at professional schools? Well, phase one of the experiment is in. Santa Clara Law School has just published its tuition rate for the 26-27 school year when this law goes into effect. Now, let me just give you a sense of tuition over the last 10, 11 years at Santa Clara. Santa Clara, a university where I taught for many years at the business school. This is the School of Law. In 2015-16, tuition was $43,700. By 18-19, it was $51,696. By 21-22, it was $54,768. By 25-26, this year, right, this school year, it's $63,280, all bankrolled by the government, who's writing checks. Guess what it is in 26-27? In 26-27, tuition at Santa Clara is $50,000 a year. which is the cap that the government has placed on the amount of lending. Exactly 50. So yeah, tuition has come down. Yeah, you want to call it a win, it's a win. I don't consider government manipulating these things a win. Government shouldn't be issuing loans, period. Government, if you really want to do away with the Department of Education, the best way to do that is to get rid of all government loans for education. You know, the government taking over the loan business was something that Obama did through executive order. It could be reversed through executive order. And the government should stop guaranteeing all of this. That probably needs legislation. But just get out of the business of student loans. And tuition will plummet. Bring the financial markets in. Financial markets will discipline universities. Governments can't. Governments won't. Financial markets can. And when they do just a little bit, by capping it, 50,000. Great news. This is good. Once in a while, something happens in the big, beautiful bill that actually is a small move in a positive direction, just small. But the main benefit here is just to show the truth of something we've been arguing for a long time. Here's a little experiment, and we can show that it works. All right, this is a quick story about trans. I mean, one of the interesting phenomena about trans is the fact that there was a huge spike in trans identification among young people in the early 2020s. I'll show you. I'm going to show you a graph. Yeah, there's a graph, right? You can see that in 2016, the number of young students self-identifying as neither male nor female was 2%. It actually went down by 2019 to, I don't know, a negligible amount. It's hard to tell exactly what that amount is. And then it started creeping up. But starting with COVID, starting with 2020, it spiked. And it got to the point where about 9% of all students refused to identify as male or female by 2023. What's amazing is immediately since then, 2024, now 2025, that number has plummeted, has gone down dramatically. Right? These are, by the way, three different surveys. Right? They all show basically the same thing. The one from Andover is the one with the most data. Right? But you can see the fire data. You can see the brown data. You can see they're all basically the same story. And what this shows is that to some extent, the phenomena of trans in the early 2020s was a social phenomenon. It was people identifying as trans because it was the cool thing to do. It was the socially beneficial thing to do. Being simply a male or female was somewhat looked down on within leftist circles, within university circles. Non-conforming sexual identity, also is in decline. If you look here at this graph, right? So these things are, at least to some extent, driven by fad, by fashion, by what's cool. Now, why the change in 2023? I mean, to a large extent, kind of woke ideology more broadly peaked in 2023 in many respects. But if you actually ask people about their ideology, there are not fewer leftists right now than there were in 2023. The far left is just as big today as it was in 2023 among students. It's just that the hot topic has shifted. What happened in 2023? Well, I think what happened in 2023 is Gaza. What happened in 2023 is they adopted a different agenda. It wasn't cutting edge anymore to be trans. what was cutting edge now was to be pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas. Rather than appear and self-identify as trans, you went out and waved a Palestinian flag and yelled from the river to the sea, even though you didn't know which river and which sea, and participated in sit-ins over Gaza and the Palestinians, and you hated on Jews and Israelis in particular, and that became the sexy, hot thing. I mean, the thing about the ideology on the left, the whole postmodern ideology that they hold, is how malleable it is to whatever group you think at any particular time is the one that is suffering, is the one that needs your moral support. It shifted from trans to Palestinian. At least that's my interpretation. I have no idea if that is backed up by the data. Okay, let's look. That is so that's good news. I mean, I think the trans issue is always going to be around. There are trans, and they're around. But as becoming a big political, big issue that everybody on campus, and I know a lot of parents have had to deal with this, their kids suddenly identifying as trans, and it being kind of a thing that is all over schools and all over the universities and just super popular. That is probably a fad. And one of the interesting things is going to be what happens if there is some kind of deal in Gaza, and if Israel doesn't get dragged into a war there. What does the left go for next? What is the next faddy thing? Now, you would think that the thing would be illegal immigrants. For some reason, I don't think that that's sexy enough for them. Partially because the left is not that pro-immigration. All right, I want to show you this video, and you tell me where it is, right? Where this video is from. You'll notice vehicles here. I'll just point out, just in case it's too small for you to see, that none of these vehicles have drivers. These are all self-driving trucks of various types, self-driving things. It's obviously in a port. You can see the big cranes in the background. So look at this. This is really cool. I mean, look at the maneuvering. Look at them stopping. These vehicles can achieve maximum speeds of 13 miles an hour. They can transport containers that are up to 70 tons. And all of these, every one that you're seeing in the video is a self-driving vehicle. Now, where is this? Now, everybody, China, somebody says the Middle East. I'll go with China. Yeah, China. Actually, this is Los Angeles. This is in the port of Long Beach, California. You can actually see on the side of some of these trucks, you can see English writing. This is happening right now in California, of all places, right? In spite of whatever deal was struck with the longshoremen about not bringing technology into the ports, technology is being brought into the port. You're not going to stop technology from being brought in. It could be on a much larger scale. This is just one terminal which is fully automated. You could automate a lot of the terminals, if not all of the terminals. But I thought this was really, really cool, particularly given that I showed you a bunch of videos of China. I wanted to show you something exciting and interesting and pretty cutting edge and really cool happening in the United States. And again, of all places, happening in the great state of California, not a state that many of you necessarily like. All right, we have very few questions. Almost all of them, really all of them, except for one, from Michael. And we are way behind on our targets for the day. We've got a few stickers from Mary Eileen. Thank you, Mary Eileen. And from Stephen Harper. Thank you, Stephen. And from Jacob. But that's it. 3 stickers. So I don't know what's going on, but there seems to be a strike among the live attendance at the Yaron Brook show in terms of the financial support. Remember, this is a trade. You listen, you gain value, and and you offer reciprocal value. So please consider asking a question. $20 questions right now are desperately needed, and you can also ask any amount. $50, $100 questions are particularly good. You can do a sticker. $50 stickers are also good. $20 stickers, $100 stickers, any of those would get us closer to our target quickly. Lyman just did $3. That's good too. We could do a bunch of $3 ones. There's Darlene doing $3. Maybe we could just do a bunch of $3 ones. There's John for 10. Thank you. All right, let me remind you of our sponsors. The Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor, and the Ayn Rand Institute is encouraging you to submit essays. Essays on Atlas Shrugged. The winning prize is $25,000, which is quite striking. It's a lot of money. Maybe I should write an essay. I don't think I qualify. But anyway, if you'd like to write an essay, the deadline is really coming up fast. It's October 31st. And you can find out information about how to write the essay, what the question is you should write on, how long, and all of that. You can find all that information out on the Ayn Rand, on aynrand.org/start here. And yeah, if you qualify, please think about writing an essay. $25,000, that is quite an inducement. Lincoln Gaffney is in college, so he qualifies, and he should go to aynrand.org/start here and think about writing an essay. What have you got to lose? A few hours of writing the essay, and you might. The upside is $25,000. That's significant upside. Alex Epstein, the number one, thinker and writer and proponent of freedom when it comes to mining and when it comes to energy production. If you want to understand the rare earth material issue fully, Alex is the resource to go to. He's the go-to resource on anything related to electricity, mining, environmental regulations, and of course, oil and gas, nuclear, all of that stuff. So check him out. You'll become a much better communicator. You'll do much better in those arguments you have come Thanksgiving with family members around these issues. So check out his Substack, alexepstein.substack.com. And then finally, Hendershot Wealth, Hendershot with 2 T's, hendershotwealth.com/YBS. If you have, coming up any kind of event where you are going to take on significant capital gains and therefore have a capital gains tax liability, maybe at the end of the year because you're selling some stock or maybe you're selling your business, check out what they're offering. Check out the offering that they have in terms of products that reduce your capital gains tax liability. Check them out at Hendershot, that's with 2 T's, wealth.com/YBS. You can also find the interview I did with Robert Hendershot on the playlist for sponsors, and you can find that video there. All right, guys. Thank you. Again, I'll remind you, stickers and questions are welcome. We still got a way to go in order to get to our targets. We don't have that many questions, so we don't have that much time to get to the target. So if you're going to do a sticker, you do a question, $20, $50, $100 would get us to our targets a lot faster. All right, let's start. Michael's asking a lot of the questions here. So a lot, whatever income we're getting today, it's largely from Michael. Will 21st century authoritarianism be more about cronyism than concentration camps? Yeah, I think so, probably. Although you won't have quite concentration camps, but you still have the gulag in a sense. You'll still have people disappearing. You'll still people dropping out of windows. I think if you want to see what authoritarianism, I think that we're heading towards, it looks much more like Putin's Russia than it does Nazi Germany or Stalin's Soviet Union. Less explicit ideology, no concentration camps, opposition people disappearing, people who disagree with the governor falling out of windows. So a lot quieter, a lot more, still violent, but not quite as violent. I don't know if Franco, Pinochet, Pinochet made a lot of people disappear. So maybe more like Pinochet or Franco, but Pinochet was a military coup. I don't expect that. Again, I think more like Putin. You get an elected official who keeps getting elected, who starts cheating on elections, who slowly accumulates power, and through cronyism builds a collection of oligarchs who he surrounds himself with, who provide economic protection and who he gives favors to. And when they step out of line, he drops them out of a window. That's the world we're heading towards, I fear. Michael says, can you do another discussion with Destiny about Mamdani, Trump, and objectivism? I've spoken to a few people who discovered you in objectivism for your interaction with him. I mean, what's his name? Destiny has made himself more difficult to talk to because he has now, after Charlie Cook's murder, he has said some pretty disgusting, horrible things. And it makes me much more skeptical about going on a show and engaging with him. I don't know. I might give it some time and see what happens. But he's talked about the fact that conservatives should be fearful when they go out into the public. And he said some things. He said a bunch of different things that I think are really disturbing and taking up to the level of, should I even be associating with this person? Now, I agree that going on a show like that brings in a bunch of people, and we might want to look for other places like that can do a similar thing. We'll see. I'm hoping that this debate with the socialist will also bring in some new people. We'll also get some real views. I don't know. Toko says Destiny also sleeps with men. Why is that a problem? You can sleep with whoever you want to. I don't care if you sleep with men or not. The question is, are you threatening people with violence? Are you, he's being accused of sleeping with very young girls, all kinds of stuff like that. I don't know. Of course, being a public figure, you get accused of lots of different things. So the question is what sticks and what makes sense and what doesn't. But his accusations and his stance after Charlie Cook's death made him really problematic. And then lots of people have come to me and said, don't go anywhere near him because he's a pedophile. But I just don't know that one. All right, let's see. I think I thanked Lyron and Darlene and John, but I should thank Enric and let's see, Lawsome Logic and Friend Harper for their stickers. Thank you, guys. Slowly. And Jason. Thank you, Jason. Slowly, very slowly chipping away. We have no whales today. The only whale we have is Michael, who's decided to spread his whaleness over many, many questions, which is all good. So, but yes, I mean, no whales today coming in with big leaps that get us to the number we need to get to. Anyway, we'll hold off on Destiny for a while and see how it all shakes out. Michael, imagine Churchill letting Nazis stay in power in Germany and being praised by making a deal with Hitler to release some English prisoners. Yeah, I mean, I think not only that. I mean, people are going after me for not giving Trump enough credit and for not seeing how great Trump is and what a giant Trump is and all of this stuff. But you're absolutely right. I mean, what did he do here? He made Israel compromise with monsters. And I'm happy that the hostages are being released, but compromise with monsters? That's pretty disgusting. Yeah, I'll just say to Toku, just because this issue is new to objectivism, I do not have anything against people who sleep with, who are gay. I don't think ultimately, Ayn Rand, while Ayn Rand had, did not like it, Leonard Peikoff has said that it is not a moral issue, and Leonard Peikoff supported gay marriage, and the objectivist movement is not anti-gay at all. At all. Indeed, many gays are objectivists and are part of this movement. So, no, I think Ayn Rand was mistaken in her evaluation of homosexuality. And it's one of the issues in which we disagree. And today it's very much normalized within the objectivist movement. So check out what Leonard Peikoff said about it. Cook, thank you for the sticker. I appreciate it. All right, Alex, a $20 question. Finally, the first one today. I work with a convention in New Orleans. It's focused on science and innovation. There are speakers who focus on philosophy. It is fairly left and hostile to objectivism, but would love to get you or ARI or an ARI fellow, I assume you want to get us on the program. Yeah, I mean, that would be great if they'll take us. So if you can find some topic that might appeal to them, maybe a something that where we are defending the Enlightenment, where we are anti-Christian and defending the Enlightenment and defending science and defending reason, maybe that would be a good topic for them. It's the topic of my book that's coming out with Dawn next year, and there are a number of objectivists who could talk about this issue, but maybe that's what you can do. I'm also going to, we could also talk about the philosophical precondition of preconditions on science and innovation. So there are a lot of topics we could do that this group might not find as offensive as, I don't know, a talk on capitalism, although we'd want to slowly weave in capitalism, get them on board. So anyway, Alex, yeah, I mean, if you need anything from me, then just drop me an email, right? Yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. Yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, and we could discuss it. All right, Michael, how were the Nazis able to put the fashion in fascism? Why do evil regimes have the nicest uniforms, whereas free societies have dumpy, oversized uniforms and don't march well in formation? Well, because authoritarianism requires, particularly fascism, requires, it's not strong in fashion, right? Uniform is not fashion. Uniform is monotone. Uniform is everybody looking the same. Everybody wearing the same uniform, everybody marching in lockstep, which is all consistent with collectivism. I think it's a tribute to the American and Israeli military that they cannot march well and that they don't look great in formation. Because the Israeli and American militaries, to some extent or another, are not collectivistic militaries. They're basically individualistic militaries. They emphasize individual, initiative and individual thought. This is why special forces guys look so sloppy, and they have beards, and they just look like normal guys. They don't wear any special uniform with lots of ribbons. And the more elite the unit, the more sloppy they are, because the more elite the unit, the more individualistic they are. So I do not think that that it's fashion that was brought into fascism. Fashion is individualistic. Fashion is everybody wears something different. Fashion, good fashion, is where people are expressing themselves differently through clothes, not all the same. So, it's easy to get people to march in lockstep, all wear the same thing, keep everything clean and neat, when they are told that they as individuals mean nothing, and they are there only to represent the collective and the group, and they must sacrifice their individuality for that group, and they must disappear as individuals. Action Jackson, which is more important for progress, art or science? Is one dependent on the other, or is this a false dichotomy? Yeah, I definitely think it's a false dichotomy. You need both. Art has historically tended to come first, in a sense that the only example we have, which is the Renaissance, you saw art become great, individualistic, positive sense of life based on science and reason. In a sense, before science took off, it took a couple of hundred years before science caught up to the arts. You could even argue that in Greece, sculpture was first, science was second, or art was first, science was second. But I don't know if that's necessary forever. Maybe it's easier to get the right philosophical ideas at the sense of life level, which then is reflected in the art, and then to get it at the level of, okay, this is how I do it, in order to be it reflected in science a lot more. But I don't know. I don't know exactly what the mechanism is. But historically, art has come first. But it doesn't matter. They feed off of each other. And art advanced partially through science. So, for example, one of the great achievements of the Renaissance was perspective. Well, perspective is a science. It's math. It's figuring out, it's geometry. It's figuring out how perspective works. Or in sculpture and in painting, I think, anatomy. Well, I mean, anatomy, carving up bodies and figuring out how the muscles works. That's science. So to some extent, they have to go together. But there's no one way to change a culture. You need it all. And there's no way to guide this thing, because it's not like the artist could be scientists and the scientists could be artists and just flip them, just convince them to be something else. Some people are going to be more likely to be artists and some people are more likely to be scientists, and you need them all. So I think it's a false dichotomy. Andy, thank you. Do you have any recommended reading regarding your West talk about population of 1 million plus? It's interesting to see how cities rose, lasting 100 years, then crashed, and compare, anything like that. Yeah, I mean, there's a good book on the fall of Rome. Yeah, but you're asking me for these book titles when, let me just get my Kindle one second. I mean, a really good book that's broader than just your question, but a really good book about rise and fall is The Closing of the Western Mind, and then a second volume, which is The Reopening of the Western Mind. Those two books by Charles Freeman, I think. Those two books are brilliant. I really recommend those. So The Closing of the Western Mind and the Reopening of the Western Mind. You'll learn a lot about these things there. And then there's this book about the fall of Rome, which I found really good, and kind of combating some of the politically correct stuff that's out now that basically says, oh, Rome never fell, there was no Dark Ages. I mean, this guy shows very clearly that there was a Dark Age. Let me see, where is it? Let me just search. In my library, God. Yeah, I don't know why it's not coming up. Yeah, I don't remember the exact, something, the fall of Rome. Let me just do one more thing to look for this in here, and then we'll go on. Oh yeah, The Fall of Rome and the End of Civilization by Brian Ward Perkins. Brian Ward Perkins. Those are two. So that and The Closing and the Reopening of the Western Mind, that'll get you going. All right. Roland, thank you for the sticker. I think I got everybody else. Okay. Michael, are they trying to restrict journalists because they think Trump has dementia? No, this is restricting journalists in the Pentagon. They want to restrict journalists because they don't like independent reporting. They don't like people reporting stuff that they don't want reported. They want to be able to control. This is part of their authoritarian tendencies. They want to be able to control information as it flows out of the Defense Department, for example. They don't want journalists to be poking around. Marius, have you heard of the Dutch government's takeover of management control of Nexperia, a Chinese-owned chipmaking company with headquarters in Netherlands? I had heard of it, I think this yesterday or the day before yesterday. I haven't read about it, so I don't know that much about it. But yes, this is part of this battle going on between China and the West around chips. There's a Chinese-owned chip manufacturer in the Netherlands, and the government is just taking over, violating the property rights of the Chinese owners. Now, exactly what was in the background, what motivated this, and exactly who owned it? Was it the government of China? Was it private Chinese investors? I don't know. I'll have to read about it and get back to you. Mary Eileen, how much control, if any, does Trump have over NATO? Could he stop NATO from attacking Russia if he wanted to? I think he has a lot of control. I think NATO, I'm not sure of this, but NATO functions to a large extent by, I think, unanimous, but I also think that, look, the United States has the largest number of troops, the largest number of weapons. It's hard for NATO countries to use American-made weapons like F-35s without American approval. Trump has a lot of control and could definitely stop NATO from acting in defense of Europe if he wanted to. Yep. It doesn't necessarily need his full-fledged support. It doesn't even need necessarily to engage American soldiers. He could halt that. NATO, even without the Americans, could still defeat Russia pretty easily. But he could probably veto it if he wanted to. Gail, why would the U.S. want to import oil from anywhere when they have so much? Well, because oil, there's all kinds of oil. So, for example, there is something called very heavy oil, which requires a particular way of refining it in order to get what you need out of it. And a lot of the U.S. refineries were built for heavy oil. This oil is not produced in the United States. You can get this oil from Canada, or you can get this oil from Venezuela, or from Russia, I think from Russia. So refineries in Louisiana and in Texas very much depend on a supply of this heavy kind of oil rather than the relatively light oil that it comes from Texas and from the United States. So now, if you were rebuilding all the refineries in the United States from scratch, I think you would just build them all to deal with the kind of oil that is produced in the United States. But given that the United States was importing oil for many, many decades, the refineries were built for imported oil, not for local oil. And it's those differences between the oil they import and the local oil that explains why we still need to import them. The refineries were built for them. Alex says, awesome. It would be next fall. Would love for you and Don to talk about the new book if it's out by then. Yeah, it would be out. It should be out by then, put it that way. So, yeah, let me know. Let us know what we need to do in order to get on the program. Esoteric dichotomy. Not a fan of creative competitions. Unlike sports with defined rules, points, and scores, art, writing seems awarded arbitrarily and subjective thoughts. Maybe, but it doesn't have to be. The goal is to make it objective. And there's no reason it can't be objective. Certainly writing skill, communication skills are not subjective. They have objective criteria. And there's absolutely no reason why you can't have creative competitions. Creativity, whether in the arts or whether in essay writing or things like that, you can say this is a good essay, this is a bad essay, this is an excellent essay, this is mediocre. You can absolutely make evaluations and rankings like that are not subjective, that are based on actual facts that have to do with written communication and the art, well, and the science of writing. And when it comes to arts, that's more complicated because you need a theory of aesthetics for that, but you can develop one. And people know, yeah, this piece of music is good, that piece of music is crap. People who know music know that, whether they can always articulate and explain why. The fact that they can't explain why isn't necessarily make it subjective. Music, for example, is very difficult to communicate about. All right, guys. Thank you to the Super Chatters. Really, really appreciate the support. I will see you guys tomorrow. Yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a great rest of your week. See you soon. Bye, everybody.